The Velthari Dominion was the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. For thousands of years they had ruled over countless star systems, spreading their empire like an endless wave of steel and light. Their cities floated between the stars, made of shining metals and glowing energy fields. Their people had forgotten what it meant to be defeated, because no one had ever beaten them. The Velthari believed they were chosen by the universe itself to rule everything that existed. Their ships moved faster than light. Their weapons could destroy entire planets, and their armies were filled with warriors who had never known fear. Wherever the Velthari went, victory followed. For generations, they expanded their reach, conquering one world after another. The species they found were always weaker, slower, or more primitive. Some fought back for a short while, but none lasted long. The Velthari didn't just win battles, they erased histories. Whole civilizations vanished under their control, their stories lost to time. The galaxy itself seemed quiet beneath their rule, and the Velthari believed this peace was proof that they were perfect. They saw themselves as the masters of order, bringing what they called enlightenment to every corner of the universe. But in truth, their order was built on fear. Their leaders, known as the High Council, watched everything from their great capital world, Velthara Prime. It was a planet covered in silver towers that reached beyond the clouds. The surface shone like a mirror reflecting the light of its twin suns. Every part of the planet was built for beauty and control. Machines managed the weather, the population was monitored by intelligent systems, and rebellion was something the younger generations had only read about in ancient records. To be Velthari meant to be powerful, perfect, and proud. The High Council often discussed what was left to conquer. Their maps of the galaxy were almost complete, filled with dots marking every star system they owned. Only the edges of the galaxy remained unclaimed, dark regions filled with dust, radiation, and primitive life. There was no glory in exploring them, they thought. But one day, deep space sensors picked up something unusual. It wasn't a distress signal or a weapon alert. It was a series of repeating patterns, radio waves traveling slowly through space like a heartbeat from a faraway world. At first, the Velthari scientists were amused. The signals were so basic they seemed almost childish. Primitive life, one of them said. They've just learned to talk to the stars. The High Council ordered a closer look just to satisfy curiosity. When they traced the source, they found it came from a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. The planet's name in its own language was Earth. The Velthari laughed when they studied it. The humans were young, barely reaching into space. Their technology was a joke compared to Velthari science. Their species still used metal bullets, rockets that took months to reach their own moon, and ships that could barely leave their home planet. They lived divided by nations, constantly fighting each other for land and power. To the Velthari, humanity was an example of what all civilizations looked like before they were conquered. But there was something strange about the humans that made the Velthari uneasy. For such a weak species, they were fast learners. The Velthari saw how quickly humans advanced. In only a few generations, they went from riding horses to landing on their own moon. They split the atom, built machines that could think, and sent probes far beyond their star system. They made mistakes, yes, but they never stopped trying. Their progress was chaotic, unpredictable, and frighteningly fast. One Velthari scholar, an old scientist named Kareth, warned the council that humanity was different. He said, "They are not the strongest, but they are the most dangerous kind of species, those who adapt." His words were met with laughter. "Adapt?" the council replied. "Against us? We have ruled for 1,000 millennia. They are insects playing with fire." Kareth said nothing more, but he kept watching the blue planet from afar. The humans continued sending signals into space, unaware that someone was listening. They sent music, greetings, and mathematical codes, hoping someone might answer. The Velthari found it amusing that these small creatures thought they were alone. But as time passed, those signals grew stronger and more complex. The Velthari noticed how humans changed their own world, how they destroyed forests, built cities, and reshaped their planet with determination and stubbornness. "They fight even their own world," one Velthari soldier said with a smirk. "Imagine what they would do to others." In their arrogance, the Velthari believed they should make contact. They saw it as an experiment, a test of how quickly a primitive species would surrender. After all, every species before them had bowed to the Dominion. Some tried to resist, but once they saw the Velthari fleet, they all gave up. The humans, they thought, would be no different. The council approved the expedition. A small fleet was sent first to observe Earth closely. Their invisible ships orbited the planet, watching human behavior. What they saw puzzled them. Humans were strange creatures. They laughed, they cried, they built, they destroyed, and yet they always rebuilt again. They fought endless wars among themselves, but somehow managed to unite when disaster struck. They had art, music, and dreams, things the Velthari had long forgotten in their pursuit of perfection. Some Velthari officers began to feel an odd kind of respect for them. They are flawed, one said, but their flaws make them strong. The High Council didn't care for such talk. To them, humans were just another target. They planned to make Earth the next jewel in their crown. The Velthari Armada, thousands of ships with weapons powerful enough to tear planets apart, was ordered to prepare. On Velthara Prime, celebrations began before the war even started. The people were told that another victory was coming, that another world would join their glorious dominion. But not everyone felt confident. Kareth, the old scientist, stood before the council one last time. He said, "You call them primitive, yet they have something you lost long ago, hope. Be careful, because hope cannot be measured by your machines." His warning was ignored. The council laughed and sent the Armada toward Earth. As the Velthari fleet left their home system, the stars around them shimmered like diamonds. Their ships were huge and silent, powered by the energy of suns. They crossed the emptiness of space with the speed of thought. Inside their command ships, holographic maps displayed the small blue planet spinning slowly in its orbit. They imagined how easy it would be to conquer it. "A single strike," the commander said, "and they will kneel." On Earth, people continued their daily lives, unaware of what was coming. Children played in parks, scientists worked in labs, and soldiers trained without knowing that the greatest war in history was about to begin. But somewhere, deep inside the human spirit, there was a quiet readiness, a sense that humanity was destined for something greater. When the Velthari ships entered the solar system, their sensors picked up the first human defenses, satellites, space stations, and a handful of warships. To the Velthari, they looked laughable. Yet something about the human broadcasts caught their attention. It wasn't a plea for peace or surrender. It was a simple message, sent in dozens of languages, all saying the same thing: "We will fight." For the first time in centuries, the Velthari commanders hesitated. No other species had ever said that to them. They didn't understand why these fragile beings were so willing to stand against impossible odds. "They do not understand what we are," the commander said coldly. "But they will learn." The Velthari fleet began its descent toward Earth, confident and unchallenged. The stars reflected off their silver hulls as they prepared to make history once again. But none of them knew that this small, defiant world would change everything. None of them knew that humanity, the young, reckless, unpredictable species they thought so weak, would soon teach the galaxy what true strength really meant. The first part of the story of humanity and the Velthari was not one of battle, but of misunderstanding. The Velthari believed power was measured by technology, by fleets, by control. Humanity believed power was measured by will, by courage, by never giving up. And when these two beliefs finally met among the stars, the galaxy would never be the same again. The Velthari fleet entered the solar system like a storm made of metal and light. Thousands of ships, each larger than a mountain, moved in perfect formation. They didn't hide or sneak in, they wanted to be seen. The leaders of the Velthari Dominion believed fear was the best weapon. Every planet they had conquered before fell silent the moment their ships appeared in the sky. They thought Earth would do the same. But they didn't understand what kind of people they were dealing with. The first images of the alien fleet were captured by telescopes and satellites orbiting Earth. Within hours, every news channel, every government, and every citizen on the planet knew the truth. Humanity was not alone, and they were not safe. People looked up at the night sky and saw strange lights moving together, too organized to be meteors or human spacecraft. Some thought it was the end of the world. Others thought it was a lie. But as more images came in, the truth was undeniable. The universe had come knocking, and it didn't look friendly. At first, fear spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with panic. Some people prayed. Others packed their bags and tried to flee cities as if they could escape into the countryside. World leaders held emergency meetings, and militaries all over the world went on high alert. The United Nations, for the first time in history, had the attention of the entire planet. It was decided that all nations would unite. There were no enemies on Earth anymore, only one common enemy out there among the stars. In underground bunkers and secret bases, scientists worked day and night. Every country shared their technology, no matter the rivalry. Old enemies shook hands. America shared its space defense systems. Russia opened its missile research. China sent engineers to build orbital shields, and Europe shared communication networks. Even smaller nations contributed what they could, anything that might give humanity a chance to survive. It was the first time in human history that Earth truly acted as one world. The Velthari sent their first message. It came as a transmission received by every major satellite. The language was instantly decoded by machines, but even before translation, humans could sense the arrogance in the tone. The message said, "We are the Velthari Dominion. We offer peace in exchange for obedience. Surrender your planet and your species will be spared." The leaders of Earth debated how to respond. Some thought they should try peace, that maybe these aliens could be reasoned with. Others knew better. These were conquerors, not diplomats. Finally, a single message was sent back, broadcast from every corner of the world. It was short, only 2 words: "We refuse." That message traveled across space, reaching the Velthari flagship. The alien commander, a tall and cold being named Commander Zeval, watched the message replay on a holographic screen. His glowing eyes narrowed and a quiet, confident smile appeared on his face. "They refuse?" he said softly. "How quaint." To him, this was nothing new. Every species refused at first. It was part of the game. The difference was that no one had ever lasted more than a single battle. He gave the order, "Prepare the fleet." On Earth, the message was received as a call to action. The refusal was a signal that there was no turning back. Humanity began preparing for war. Every satellite in orbit was reprogrammed to act as a defense system. Space stations were converted into command posts. Engineers all over the world worked on new weapons, laser systems, nuclear warheads, and EMP devices that might disrupt alien machines. In secret labs, scientists tried to understand Velthari technology. From the first images of their ships, they noticed strange energy patterns that didn't match anything known to human science. The aliens didn't seem to use fuel or engines. They seemed to bend space itself to move. Still, the scientists refused to give up. If they couldn't match the aliens' technology, they would rely on what humans had always used to survive: creativity. As days passed, the world transformed. Cities dimmed their lights at night to avoid becoming targets. People volunteered by the millions to help, some to fight, some to build, some to carry supplies. The world economy stopped, but no one cared. Everything was now focused on one thing: defending Earth. Even school children drew pictures of rockets and soldiers, their innocent hope mixing with fear. Humanity had never been so united or so terrified. The Velthari fleet moved closer, and Earth could finally see their ships with the naked eye. Bright lines like silver scars across the darkness. Every telescope on the planet was aimed at them. Scientists estimated that their fleet was powerful enough to destroy the entire solar system if they wished. But the Velthari didn't want to destroy Earth. They wanted to conquer it, to make it a symbol of their endless dominance. The first battle began near Mars. The Velthari destroyed several unmanned human probes just to show their power. The explosions lit up the Martian sky, visible even from Earth. But the humans didn't send an army to Mars. They were waiting. They knew they couldn't win a direct fight in space. Instead, they planned to lure the aliens closer, to make the battlefield their home. Earth would be their fortress. As the Velthari ships entered the inner solar system, human communication networks filled with coded messages. Pilots were ordered to their stations. Naval ships launched from hidden bases under the oceans, carrying experimental weapons built in record time. In underground bunkers, generals and presidents sat side by side, watching the same screens. Then something unexpected happened. The Velthari sent another message, not of peace this time, but of warning. "Do not resist," it said. "This is your final chance." The humans ignored it. Instead, they launched dozens of missiles into space. The Velthari laughed when they saw them. Their energy shields were so strong that human weapons couldn't even scratch their ships. The missiles exploded harmlessly before they even reached the targets. But what the Velthari didn't know was that those missiles weren't meant to destroy them. They were meant to gather data. Every explosion, every signal bounce, every sensor reflection helped human scientists learn more about alien shields. Within hours, Earth's engineers were already adjusting their next move. Humanity had turned the first failure into information, and that was their greatest strength. Commander Zaval watched as the humans continued firing useless weapons. He admired their stubbornness but found it amusing. "They think persistence is power," he said. "Let them exhaust themselves. We'll strike soon." Meanwhile on Earth, soldiers prepared for the impossible. Fighter pilots from every nation trained together. Commanders shared strategies. Translators worked day and night, and scientists tried to predict how alien weapons worked. Humanity didn't just prepare for battle, they prepared to adapt. If they couldn't match strength with strength, they would fight with unpredictability. When the Velthari fleet finally reached Earth's orbit, the sight was beyond imagination. The night sky filled with massive glowing ships blocking out the stars. People across the planet watched from rooftops, beaches, and mountains, frozen in awe and fear. Some cried. Some prayed. Some clenched their fists. No one spoke. For the first time, the entire human race looked up at the same thing. Then came the first strike. A single Velthari cruiser fired a beam of energy that pierced through the upper atmosphere and vaporized a military satellite. The soundless explosion lit up the sky. The aliens expected humans to surrender immediately. Instead, Earth responded with a roar of missiles, lasers, and electromagnetic pulses. Every weapon fired at once. It looked chaotic, messy, and desperate, but it was working. For a brief moment, the Velthari shields flickered. Not much, but enough for human radar to detect a weakness. Scientists shouted in excitement inside their control rooms. They had found something, a pattern in the shield's frequency. The aliens didn't notice. They thought their victory was certain. Humanity, for all its fear and chaos, had done something the Velthari never expected. They stood their ground. Even when their weapons failed, even when their defenses burned, they didn't stop fighting. Every nation, every army, and every person played a part. Some fixed satellites under fire. Some guided ships into orbit. Some hacked into alien frequencies trying to send false signals. The war had officially begun. The Velthari came expecting a quick victory, a short and glorious conquest. But what they found instead was something far more dangerous than an army. They found a species that refused to kneel. And as Earth burned with defiance, as the first human pilots gave their lives in space battles, as engineers worked sleeplessly to build new weapons, something began to shift. For the first time in their long history, the Velthari Dominion realized a strange feeling they had forgotten centuries ago: doubt. The humans were not the strongest. They were not the smartest. But they were relentless, and as the Velthari fleet continued its assault, the galaxy's greatest empire began to understand that this little blue world was not going to fall as easily as all the others before it. The war between humanity and the Velthari Dominion began in a way no one could have imagined. The sky above Earth was filled with fire, light, and soundless destruction. Alien ships hovered in orbit, their glowing weapons burning through the atmosphere like falling stars. But unlike every other world the Velthari had conquered, Earth did not surrender. Humans fought back with everything they had: missiles, nuclear weapons, and even improvised space mines made from old satellites. None of it matched the aliens' power, yet humanity refused to stop. At first, the Velthari commanders thought it was amusing. They saw humans as insects throwing stones at giants, but soon amusement turned into frustration. No matter how many bases they destroyed, more appeared somewhere else. No matter how many human ships were shot down, more pilots took their place. Humanity was not fighting to win. They were fighting to survive, and that made them dangerous. In the early weeks, Earth's cities suffered heavy losses. Major capitals were struck by alien bombardments. Communication systems collapsed, power grids failed, and millions were displaced. But even in the darkest moments, humans found ways to resist. Engineers repaired systems under fire. Doctors treated the wounded with whatever they could find, and soldiers risked their lives to save others. The Velthari could destroy machines and buildings, but they couldn't destroy the human spirit. In space, small groups of human pilots began to use hit-and-run tactics. They would hide behind the moon or in asteroid fields, attack a single alien ship, and then vanish before the Velthari could react. These small victories didn't matter much to the aliens at first, but they started to add up. Every lost ship made the Velthari question how these primitive beings could outsmart their advanced systems. The Velthari were used to fighting predictable enemies, species that followed patterns, that feared death, that surrendered when they saw they couldn't win. Humans were nothing like that. They were unpredictable. One moment they'd attack with everything they had, the next they'd retreat and disappear into space debris. Veltari commanders started describing humans with one word they had never used before: chaotic. On the ground, resistance movements began everywhere. Civilians became soldiers overnight. Old factories were turned into weapon workshops, and every scientist who could work on alien technology did so. Some humans managed to capture small pieces of Veltari machinery from crashed ships. What they found inside changed everything. Human scientists discovered that the Veltari technology was powered by something called quantum fusion, a process beyond human understanding. But they also noticed weaknesses, patterns in the energy flow, gaps in the shielding systems, and ways the alien machines adapted too slowly. Humans didn't need to fully understand the technology. They only needed to find a way to break it. And that was what they did best, turning knowledge into survival. The war spread beyond Earth. The moon became a battlefield. The Veltari tried to set up a base there to control the planet more easily. But human forces launched a desperate mission to stop them. Dozens of human ships, many built in secret and barely spaceworthy, attacked the alien base. Most were destroyed, but the mission succeeded. The explosion from that battle lit up the night sky for hours, seen from every continent. Humanity cheered, not because the war was won, but because they had finally shown the galaxy that they could fight back. In the Veltari command ship, Commander Zevel grew restless. His armies were winning, but too slowly. He had never faced such resistance. He studied human tactics and grew angry at how illogical they were. "They sacrifice everything," he said in disbelief. "No species fights like this." His advisors warned him that continuing the war this way was dangerous. "They learn too fast," one of them said. "Every time we strike, they adapt." Zevel ignored the warning. "Let them learn," he said coldly. "We'll end this with one final blow." But things didn't go as planned. The humans began using a strategy called ghost warfare. Instead of meeting the aliens head-on, they used deception. They jammed alien sensors, sent fake transmissions, and tricked the Veltari into attacking empty locations. Human hackers managed to break into the lower communication frequencies of the Veltari fleet. Using stolen codes, they sent false commands that confused enemy ships. Some even turned their weapons on their own allies by mistake. Every battle became harder for the Veltari. They could destroy ships and armies, but they couldn't destroy the idea of human persistence. Even when humanity was pushed to the edge of extinction, they fought harder. There was no single leader, no single army, just millions of people united by one belief: Earth must not fall. In one of the most daring missions of the war, a group of human pilots called the Dawn Squadron launched an attack deep into enemy space. Their mission was to capture a Veltari drone ship and bring it back to Earth for study. The chances of survival were almost zero, but they volunteered anyway. Out of 50 pilots, only 4 returned, their ships heavily damaged. But they succeeded. The drone was captured. From its memory core, human engineers learned something incredible. The Veltari fleets were connected through a massive central communication array located on a distant world called Veltara Nexus. It was the brain of their empire. If it could be destroyed, the Dominion would collapse. This discovery changed the course of the war. Humanity now had a target, but reaching it would require everything they had left. In secret, scientists and military leaders began planning a mission so dangerous that even they doubted it could succeed. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, the war grew more brutal. The Veltari started using biological weapons, releasing nanomachines that melted metal and poisoned air. But humans found ways to resist even that, creating counter-viruses, shielding suits, and electromagnetic pulses that neutralized alien toxins. Every weapon the Veltari unleashed, humanity found a way to counter. It wasn't quick or easy, but it was constant. The Veltari soldiers began to fear humans. They whispered among themselves that humans didn't die like others. They fought even when mortally wounded. They called them the cursed survivors. Some Veltari even refused to fight, saying the humans were unnatural, that their willpower defied logic. Commander Zevel punished these soldiers severely, but fear spread fast. The turning point came during the Battle of Jupiter. The Veltari fleet tried to block Earth's last supply route by positioning warships near the giant planet. Humanity launched an attack with everything they had: old rockets, refitted shuttles, and experimental plasma weapons. The battle lasted for days. Many human ships were destroyed, but they managed to trap the Veltari fleet inside Jupiter's radiation belt. The planet's intense storms and radiation disrupted the alien systems. Dozens of Veltari ships crashed into the planet's atmosphere, burning like meteors. The victory was costly but historic. Humanity had defeated a part of the Veltari fleet for the first time. Back on Earth, the victory lifted spirits. People celebrated in the ruins of their cities, waving torn flags and singing songs. For the first time, they believed they could win. Commander Zeval watched the destruction of his fleet with disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. "They are primitives." He slammed his fist against the console, the lights flickering around him. "They have no right to challenge us." But deep inside, even he began to feel doubt. The Veltari scientists studied humans and realized something terrifying. Humans didn't just fight, they evolved during the war. Every defeat made them stronger. Every loss taught them something new. "They are chaos incarnate," said one Veltari researcher. "You cannot predict chaos." As the months passed, the Velthari's grip on the solar system weakened. Human resistance cells on Mars and the Moon kept attacking supply ships. Alien communication became slower, their fleets disorganized. The once perfect Veltari war machine began to show cracks. Humanity, still outnumbered and outgunned, continued to fight with creativity and courage. Children grew up under alien skies, learning how to survive. Old men and women became leaders, teaching others how to rebuild. The Earth was wounded but not broken. The war that had started as a hopeless defense was now becoming something greater, a revolution. The strongest civilization in the galaxy was starting to lose control, not because of superior weapons or advanced science, but because of one simple truth: humans never gave up. Every human who fought knew they might die, but they also knew their death would mean something. That belief gave them power no machine could match. In every ruined city, every destroyed base, and every silent night under the alien sky, humanity whispered the same promise: we will not fall. And as the Velthari watched their perfect empire start to tremble, they finally began to understand what Kareth, the old Veltari scientist, had warned them long ago. Hope cannot be measured, and it cannot be conquered. The humans had fought for months, maybe even years. Every battle had been a struggle, every victory paid for with loss. The Veltari Dominion, which had once seemed invincible, was beginning to show cracks in its armor. Their fleets were damaged, their communication lines were disrupted, and their confidence was shaken. Humanity, though battered and exhausted, had survived against all odds. The human race had discovered something the Velthari had never faced before. Not strength, not speed, not advanced technology, but the unbreakable will to survive and to fight for one another. Scientists on Earth had spent countless hours analyzing Velthari systems. They studied captured drones, salvaged weapons, and even fragments of Velthari ships that had fallen into orbit. Slowly, they began to understand the structure of the alien fleet, the way their ships communicated, the way their shields worked, the way their weapons were controlled by a central network. This network, called the Velthara Nexus, connected every ship, every station, and every weapon in their empire. If it could be destroyed, the entire Dominion would be thrown into chaos, but the Nexus was heavily protected. It was located on a distant planet, deep in Velthari space, guarded by thousands of warships and automated defenses. No human ship had ever come close. The journey itself was perilous, through fields of asteroids, radiation belts, and alien patrols. Still, humanity refused to back down. A plan was made, one so risky that most believed it would be a suicide mission. But the people chosen to lead it volunteered without hesitation. They understood that the fate of the entire human race rested on their shoulders. The fleet that would strike at the Velthara Nexus was small but specially equipped. Engineers had built stealth ships that could hide in space, vessels designed to slip past enemy sensors. Weapons were modified to exploit weaknesses in Velthari shields discovered from previous encounters. Pilots were trained to work in teams, to adapt, and to improvise under any circumstances. For months, simulations were run, mistakes corrected, and strategies perfected. The human leadership knew this might be the final chance to turn the war in their favor. Meanwhile, the Velthari still believed they were in control. Commander Zeval had gathered his forces near the Nexus, confident that no human ship could ever reach them. His fleets patrolled the space around the planet. His defenses were active at all times, and his elite soldiers were ready to crush any threat. He had seen the humans fight before and had been mildly impressed, but he remained arrogant. To him, victory was inevitable. After all, every species that resisted the Velthari had eventually fallen. Why should humans be any different? The human fleet began their journey in silence. Pilots and engineers worked together, communicating with signals carefully coded to avoid detection. They avoided open space, hugging shadows of asteroids and gas clouds hiding from the ever-watchful Velthari sensors. Days turned into weeks as they traveled through hostile territory. Every moment a test of patience, courage, and precision. Supplies were limited, fuel was scarce, and every decision carried the weight of life or death. Small skirmishes occurred along the way. Velthari scouts occasionally spotted the fleet, attacking with energy beams that could slice through ships like knives through paper. Human pilots responded with clever maneuvers, dodging attacks and using stealth technology to disappear. Each engagement was a lesson. They learned how the Velthari communicated, how quickly their weapons adjusted, and how to exploit tiny openings in their shields. Every battle brought them closer to their ultimate goal. As they neared the Velthara nexus, the danger increased. Massive defense satellites, orbiting guns, and patrol ships surrounded the planet. It was a fortress in space designed to withstand any attack. But humans had something the Velthari could not anticipate: adaptability. Teams of pilots and engineers devised a plan to overload the sensors, sending false signals that made the Velthari think attacks were coming from different directions. Decoys were launched, distracting the alien fleet while the main strike team slipped through the defenses. The strike team finally approached the surface of the Nexus. The planet was unlike any human had ever seen, its sky filled with swirling energy fields, its surface glowing with alien technology. Massive towers connected the planetary defenses, and moving weapons platforms bristled with energy. Yet despite the overwhelming odds, the humans pressed forward. Their ships dodged blasts, their weapons fired with precision, and their determination pushed them onward. Inside the Velthari command center, panic began to spread. The humans had reached the outer defense ring, and for the first time, Zeval realized that they might succeed. Sensors were overloaded with fake signals, ships had disappeared from radar, and the humans were now inside the planet's atmosphere. Zeval ordered every weapon to fire, every patrol ship to intercept, but the humans had anticipated this. Using speed, stealth, and clever maneuvers, they avoided destruction at every turn. The final approach was the most dangerous. The human ships entered the heart of the Nexus, dodging energy beams and automated defenses. Pilots communicated constantly, directing each other with calm precision despite the chaos around them. Engineers on board calculated shield frequencies in real time, directing weapons to exploit every small flaw. The humans fought not just with courage but with intelligence, combining skill, strategy, and instinct. Then came the critical moment. The human fleet launched a coordinated strike against the central network of the Nexus. Energy weapons fired at precise intervals, EMP pulses disabled certain defense systems, and viruses planted in the network caused the alien systems to misfire. The Velthari ships and defenses began to collapse one after another. The perfect synchronization of their empire was broken. Ships collided, energy shields overloaded, and the planet itself shook as systems malfunctioned. Commander Zeval watched in disbelief as his empire crumbled. His carefully constructed fleets were falling apart, his defenses failing, and his commands ignored by ships that were being destroyed from within. Every human tactic, every human sacrifice had worked to bring the Velthari to their knees. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion was vulnerable. The destruction of the Nexus had a domino effect. Without the central network, Velthari ships scattered, unable to coordinate. Some fled, some crashed into each other, and some were destroyed by the humans as they escaped. The carefully planned invasions of planets across the galaxy were halted. Worlds that had been occupied for thousands of years regained control, as Velthari garrisons were cut off from command. Humanity had done the impossible. They had struck the heart of the strongest civilization and shattered it. Back on Earth, the news of the success spread like wildfire. People celebrated not because the war was over, but because hope had returned. Humanity had proven that no empire, no matter how powerful, was unbeatable. The people of Earth understood that this victory had been bought with immense sacrifice, but it had been achieved through courage, intelligence, and relentless determination. The survivors of the human fleet returned as heroes. They were honored not just for bravery but for their ingenuity and teamwork. Each pilot, engineer, and strategist had played a role in defeating an enemy thought to be invincible. Their names would be remembered in history, not only for what they had done but for what they represented, the unyielding spirit of humanity. Meanwhile, the Velthari were forced to retreat. Their empire was in chaos, their fleet scattered, and their people demoralized. The High Council convened in desperation, realizing that they had underestimated a species they considered primitive. Every member of the council had to confront the truth. The humans had outsmarted them, fought with unimaginable courage, and achieved the impossible. The fall of the Velthari dominion was not sudden, but inevitable once the Nexus was destroyed. Without central control, their empire could not function. Worlds rebelled, fleets disintegrated, and the once feared dominion became a shadow of its former glory. Humanity had not only survived, they had won. For humans, the victory was bittersweet. Thousands of lives had been lost. Entire cities were in ruins, and the cost had been enormous. Yet there was pride in knowing that they had faced a foe unlike any other, and had prevailed. They had learned that courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome even the most impossible odds. And as the survivors of the Velthari fleets retreated into the void, humanity looked to the stars not with fear, but with understanding. They had faced the strongest civilization in the galaxy, and had not only survived, they had changed the course of history forever. The war had ended, but the story of human resilience, strategy, and unyielding determination would live on in the memories of both species. The galaxy had learned a new truth. Strength alone did not guarantee victory. Will, courage, and the refusal to surrender could topple even the mightiest empire. Humanity had proven that the impossible could be done, and in doing so, they had earned their place among the stars. The war with the Velthari dominion had ended, but the aftermath was a world and a galaxy forever changed. Humanity had survived the impossible, defeated the strongest civilization in the galaxy, and lived to tell the story. Yet victory did not come without cost. Cities were in ruins. Millions of lives had been lost, and the skies were still filled with debris from the battles that had raged across the solar system. People everywhere mourned those who had died, but even in grief there was pride. Humanity had proven something no one had ever believed possible, that the human spirit could stand against the mightiest of empires and prevail. The first task after the war was rebuilding. On Earth, people worked tirelessly to repair their shattered cities. Engineers and architects repurposed the remnants of destroyed buildings, turning them into shelters and community centers. Roads were repaired, power grids restored, and hospitals rebuilt from the ruins. Every nation, despite previous rivalries, contributed to the effort. Resources were shared, technology was exchanged, and humans once again acted as one species. The unity that had carried them through the war continued to guide them in peace. Beyond Earth, humanity faced another challenge, dealing with the remnants of the Velthari dominion. Many alien worlds had been left in chaos after the collapse of the Velthari command networks. Some planets were abandoned, others were in rebellion, and countless populations were displaced or enslaved before the human strike had freed them. Human leaders understood that they could not conquer or control these worlds. They had fought to survive, not to rule. Instead, they extended a hand of help, offering technology, medical aid, and guidance for rebuilding. Humans showed that victory did not require oppression, and their approach won the trust of many former Velthari subjects. The surviving Velthari themselves were forced to reconsider their place in the galaxy. Once proud and untouchable, they were now scattered and vulnerable. Some wanted revenge, but most realized that they had underestimated a species that could adapt, endure, and fight with unparalleled courage. Humanity had earned their respect, not through domination, but through resilience and ingenuity. Small delegations of Velthari traveled to Earth to learn from humans, and some even offered to help stabilize the newly freed planets. It was an extraordinary moment. Former conquerors humbling themselves before the very species they had intended to destroy. Human scientists and engineers took on the monumental task of learning from Velthari technology. Pieces of ships, energy weapons, and drones were studied in labs across the globe. What humans discovered revolutionized their understanding of science, energy, and space travel. Velthari propulsion systems, once thought impossible, were reverse-engineered. leading to new starships capable of reaching distant star systems in a fraction of the time it had once taken. New energy sources were discovered, and medicine advanced through the study of alien biology. The war had been devastating, but it also opened doors to knowledge that would change humanity forever. As humanity expanded into space, they did so cautiously. They did not seek conquest or empire, but exploration and connection. The lessons of the war had been clear. Power alone does not make a species great. It is the courage, cooperation, and will to do what is right that matters most. Humans began forming alliances with other civilizations, including former Velthari worlds, promoting peace, trade, and cultural exchange. Humanity became a symbol of hope and resilience, not fear. On Earth, society itself began to change. Governments had proven that unity could overcome even the most impossible challenges. People realized that working together, rather than fighting each other, was the key to survival. Old conflicts slowly faded, replaced by cooperation and shared goals. Education became more focused on science, engineering, and critical thinking, preparing future generations to explore the stars responsibly. Art and culture thrived as people expressed their experiences of war, loss, and triumph through music, literature, and visual arts. Humanity celebrated the stories of those who had fought and those who had sacrificed, ensuring that their legacy would never be forgotten. The veterans of the war became legends. Pilots, engineers, and soldiers who had risked everything were honored not only for their bravery, but for their intelligence, creativity, and adaptability. Stories of daring raids, clever tactics, and selfless acts spread across the world, inspiring children to dream big, and adults to never underestimate the power of determination. Statues were erected, memorials created, and lessons were taught in schools so that the sacrifices of humanity's heroes would guide future generations. As decades passed, humans established permanent colonies beyond the solar system. These colonies were not designed to conquer, but to explore, research, and connect with other civilizations. Trade routes were established, communications networks expanded, and humanity became an integral part of the galactic community. Former Velthari leaders and their people were included in councils and discussions, ensuring that past conflicts would not repeat. Mutual respect rather than fear now governed relations between humans and alien civilizations. Even as humanity's influence spread, they remembered the lessons of the war. They never sought to dominate, never sought revenge, and never forgot the cost of pride and arrogance. The Velthari, once rulers of the galaxy, served as a reminder that strength alone is not enough. Knowledge, courage, adaptability, and the willingness to work together define true power. Humans use these lessons to guide not only their expansion into space, but their relationships with one another on Earth. The story of the war became a cornerstone of human culture. Historians recorded every detail of the battles, strategies, and innovations. Writers told tales of ordinary people performing extraordinary acts. Teachers used the events as lessons in science, ethics, and leadership. Children learned not only the history of the war, but the values that had made victory possible: resilience, intelligence, creativity, and unity. These stories inspired generations to come, shaping humanity's identity in a way that nothing else could. The galaxy itself began to change. Where once fear had ruled, hope now spread. Planets that had been enslaved by the Velthari were now free to govern themselves. Civilizations that had hidden from the Empire began to thrive, inspired by the example of Earth. Humanity did not claim ownership of these worlds. They guided and assisted, acting as mentors and allies. In doing so, humans earned a reputation as a species that could be trusted, a species whose courage and wisdom could lead to peace rather than oppression. Humanity's victory also had a profound effect on the survivors of the Velthari dominion. Once arrogant, cold, and ruthless, many began to see the value of cooperation, humility, and respect. The Dominion survivors began rebuilding their society, now guided by lessons learned from humans. The High Council, once rigid and authoritarian, fragmented into smaller groups that focused on diplomacy and development. Humans and Velthari worked together to prevent future wars, creating alliances that stretched across star systems. The human race had changed fundamentally. They had faced annihilation, fought against an empire that seemed unbeatable, and won. But the true transformation was not in their technology or military might, it was in their spirit. Humanity had learned that courage, hope, and unity were the most powerful forces in the universe. These lessons became the foundation for a new era, one in which humans would explore, learn, and inspire rather than conquer. As centuries passed, humans continued to expand into the galaxy, always remembering the lessons of their war with the Veltari. They became leaders not through fear but through wisdom. They became explorers, teachers, and allies. And everywhere they went, stories of the tiny blue planet that had stood against the greatest empire in the galaxy spread far and wide. Humans became a symbol that even the smallest, most fragile species could achieve greatness through determination, intelligence, and the unbreakable will to fight for what was right. Even the Velthari, once feared across the stars, could not ignore the impact of humanity. They told stories of the humans' courage, of their ingenuity, of the way they had stood united against impossible odds. Children on Velthari worlds learned of the humans not as enemies but as examples of what it meant to have hope, to adapt, and to fight for freedom. The humans had changed the galaxy not through domination, but through the example of their lives and deeds. Humanity's story, born from struggle and sacrifice, continued to inspire every generation. Scientists reached further into space, explorers journeyed to distant stars, and diplomats worked tirelessly to maintain peace. The Earth became a symbol of what could be achieved when a species refused to give in to fear, when people worked together, and when courage and determination overcame even the most powerful forces in the universe. In the end, humanity's victory was not about destruction or conquest. It was about proving that the impossible could be done. They had faced the strongest civilization in the galaxy and emerged victorious. Not because they had better weapons, not because they were stronger, but because they refused to surrender, because they valued life, courage, and unity above all else. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Power is meaningless without will, and strength is meaningless without hope. Humans did not seek to be rulers of the stars. They sought to be witnesses, teachers, and guardians. Their war had ended, but their journey was just beginning. And as the people of Earth looked up at the stars, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they had already achieved something no other species had. They had faced the strongest empire in the galaxy, stood against it, and had not only survived, they had changed the course of history forever.